I had a really great childhood. I grew up with 3 siblings, and my family in Paxton and then in Sutherland. We always went to Sunday school and we went to church. And I did learn like the stories from the Bible, the books of the Bible. But as I recall from when I was young, I never heard the gospel message. So it didn't become real to me. And then when we came home from church, it was kind of business as usual. When I was in college in Omaha, a girl came knocking on our door, and she was going to Grace College of the Bible. I think it's called Grace University now. And she was doing a religious survey and wanted to know, like, if we were believers. Of course, I wanted to answer those things growing up, going to church. And I remember the question of, if you were to die tonight and go to heaven, and God said, "Why should I let you in?" What would you say? And I didn't really know the answer. But she did invite us to start a Bible study, and that's where it really became like an aha thing. It made sense to me, and yes, I wanted to receive the Lord as my Savior. I dated Bruce, my husband, pretty much all through high school. Our first date was prom. I was a sophomore, and he was a senior, and then we dated for 5 years and got married. He graduated from college, started a job. After we were married about 2 years, we decided that we wanted to start our family, and nothing was happening. And after about a year that we needed to go see the doctor, he sent us on to an infertility specialist. We found out the reason, but it just wasn't happening. So eventually the doctor said to us, "I'm not going to say that you won't ever have children, but I suggest that you pursue adoption." So we ended up working with Nebraska Children's Home for 12 years before we were able to adopt our son Creighton. We decided that we would like to add another child to our family about 4 years later, and adopted then through Holt, which is a Christian agency, and they started in Korea, and we did end up adopting a little girl, Sydney, from Korea. We got Sydney at 5 months, and at 8 months old, there was a day where her regular babysitter couldn't watch her, and so we had to find someone to watch her for the day so that I could go to work. A lot of things were not working out. I called and called and called. We finally found a high schooler who had had babysitting classes, and we had her come to the house to watch the kids that day. It unfortunately happened that she put Sydney up on the changing table, and Sydney fell off and hit her head on the wood floor and ended up breaking her skull and having a bleed all day. And she had tried to get help. Things just didn't work out. It was one of those like, God, if you could only do that over again, why did all the circumstances happen the way that they did? But she couldn't get a hold of me. Bruce came home and checked on her, but he didn't know that she had a bleed. So by the time I got home that night at 5, Sydney was gray. She was almost dead. I rushed her to the ER, and they intubated her, which means put a tube down her throat, and flew her by helicopter to Kearney, where she had brain surgery. She ended up having a clot the size of an apple in her head, which in a baby's head is very large. What had happened was all day that had pushed against her brain, and a lot of her brain tissue had died. And so she had what they called a TBI, a traumatic brain injury. I ended up spending weeks with her, and Creighton was at home most of the time. Bruce sometimes was with me and sometimes with Sydney. She needed rehab, so we took her to a rehab hospital as a baby, but it was a challenge and very stressful. It was challenging to help Sydney and to raise her. She ended up with high needs, very low functioning. We had OTs at our house, PTs at our house, speech, everything, all the time. And in addition, Creighton was running circles around us. And so, yes, it was very busy. The whole time that we were going through all of this, our church has been absolutely wonderful. We started out in the young couples group. Free Spirits is what it was called. And every one of those couples, and we also started out in a prayer group on Wednesday nights, and those were the couples that were like our parents' age, and Bruce and I were the only young couple that came. They were just amazing, and they prayed for us. They would send us notes. I remember a dear friend, when we were expecting Sydney, she made a dedication gown, like a baptismal gown for Sydney that was beautiful with smocking. When Creighton had his baby shower, we got 100 presents. You know, just people blessed us. They brought food. When Sydney had her accident, the church filled the freezer of the friend who was keeping Creighton, and that got full and they didn't know what else to do, so then they brought food over and filled our freezer so Bruce could have meals. People have just been amazing. At one point when Sydney was still very young and it was summer and it was hard for me, a Sunday school class came and painted our whole house in one day. And we couldn't have done it without the church. The church was our family. We have a great family and support system too, but they were, in addition, our extended family. And we have loved them. We have loved this church and others in the community that are believers. And I don't even know what else to say about them, but it has been so meaningful and they mean a lot to us. God's bringing me through a new season in my life right now. It still involves our children, but we are raising our 7-year-old granddaughter, and then we have our 14-year-old grandson over most of the time in our house. And then I just recently retired. And people ask me, you know, how is it? And it's certainly busy, but I'm really loving it, and I'm seeing the purpose in being retired because then I can put more fully, develop and help and pour into these kids' lives. And we know, as sure as we can know it, that God will take us through because He's done it in the past. And He'll just continue to do that because He's God. And we don't have to know all the reasons why. There was a point when you wonder, you know, why us? Why is this happening? But you don't have to know all the reasons. You just have to trust Him.